After missing out on the second half of the Nations Cup, completely missing TGR, and then missing the first round of Manufacturers Cup, I came back today, qualified 4th, finished in 3rd, scoring my 2nd highest points of all time. I'm now a pretty close 2nd for Aston Martin, and Aston Martin's looking like it could possibly make it to the World Tour this year, so I'm going to push. I, like many people, use humor as a way to deal with trauma and traumatic situations, so we're going to talk a little bit about heartbreak pace. I've got a group chat that I talk in pretty frequently. There's 7 of us. 3 of us have been to World Tours. An additional 1 has been to a national level Gran Turismo event. Twice, actually. And so all of us, we met each other through Gran Turismo. And one of the running jokes is the concept of heartbreak pace. If you watch my streams, you probably know Sosa. Sosa got his heart broken, made it to the World Tour immediately after. The reason I'm making this really ridiculous introduction is because some of you might realize that I haven't been around as much, I haven't been streaming, I haven't been uploading, and even on my Twitch, where I've been streaming pretty consistently for the past 6 years, I have not streamed very much at all over the past 3 weeks, and that's because my wife left me. Now, I'm not here for sympathy, I'm here to build a narrative. I had no expectations going into this race, especially considering how little I practiced. I put probably maybe a quarter of the effort into this race than I usually have, and I have barely driven the past 3 weeks. So with all that said, I think heartbreak pace is the only way that I can explain how I just got my 2nd highest score ever, my 2nd ever 400 points, and I made it so I'm still in contention for Aston Martin. If you follow the North and South American regions, then you probably realize that you're not seeing a lot of the names that you recognize, and that's because I am now in 2nd split. I have 92,000 of a possible 100,000 DR, and that puts me at 4th place in 2nd split. I'm guessing the cutoff is around 96,000. I had a little bit more than 96,000 at the beginning of the exhibition season, and I was in top split each time. What you might not realize is this actually puts me in a much better position than if I were in top split. You see, the point system is really crazy. When you're in 2nd split, if you win it, you could potentially go home with points that you could only get from getting 3rd or 4th place in top split. The 2nd split lobby is so stacked that getting 3rd place in this race would net you more than getting 5th place in the top split. With all that said, I still have to stress how much I had absolutely zero expectations going into this. The man who's leading for Aston Martin actually scored 2nd place in 2nd split and has much more points than anyone else in Aston Martin, even now including this score that I got today. The best time that I managed to set in the time trial was 31.6, which is not super competitive. It was pretty close to the man that I'm trying to beat, the other Aston Martin driver, but I don't think it was quite as fast. On top of that, in real live qualifying, which you're watching right now, I've got to do about that same time in order to really be competitive here. And usually, not always, but usually it's much more difficult to set a really good time close to your time trial time when it comes to the actual lobbies. It always feels a little bit different, and that's probably down to the fact that tire wear is on during the live qualification. On top of that, it's a one-shot. We only get one chance. If you mess up at all, you can't go back, and I'd already made a few big mistakes by this point. At this point, it probably helped a lot that I had no expectations because I wasn't really nervous at all. If I were really grinding this out, I would have spent hours on it each day, practicing both time trial as well as race pace, and even jumping in trying to simulate the lobby conditions for the live qualifying like this. I ended up doing 5 laps of race pace and maybe an hour or 2 of time trial before this. And then I started the stream about 2 hours before the race itself, and so I spent that time warming up as well, but besides that, I had done 0 prep. All of that leads to why I was very excited and very nervous when I saw that I had the purple lap. I had the fastest time so far as of the corner before the last one. At this point I thought pole might be possible, but I also was aware of the fact that I didn't take the final corner very well, and this car does not have very good top speed. So to see that I was in 4th place, that felt really good. Where I wasn't nervous before, I quickly became nervous because it's super nervy setting a really early time and then having to wait to see what your competitors are going to set. So I was pretty much just holding my breath until I saw that Marza was a little bit slower. That was good enough for me. Now that I'd set a pretty good quali time, I realized I needed to check the points, and so if I could make a single overtake, just one, and hold it, I'd be able to get 400 points. My 2nd ever 400, and of course that would put me in contention for Aston Martin still. I'd still be definitely below my main competitor, but it would make it so it wasn't impossible to make some moves towards the end of the season. As the grid lined up and the race was about to start, I made the terrible realization that I hadn't driven in dirty air whatsoever. One of the big pieces that I used to miss all the time in race prep is actually driving behind cars, especially behind cars that are going to be faster than you, and some who would be a little bit less fast than you, so you can get used to exactly what's going to happen when you're in that dirty air. At that moment, I looked over at chat, and not only was I reminded that I have a fantastic group of supporters, but they reminded me that this is something that I do all the time. There's no reason to be nervous. I can adjust on the fly, so I got down to work. In front, we've got Will, Rod, and Joao, all very, very fast drivers. I didn't think there was going to be any kind of real opportunity to overtake any of them, at least not for a little while, so my plan was just to try to stay behind them and even work with them, if possible. Right off the bat, Joao made a bit of a mistake, but it wasn't quite enough to try to make a move out of it. I don't think I would have been able to do anything anyways, but even if it looked like I had a move, I probably would have still given him the bump just to try to stay in the pack up front for the beginning of the race. It became really clear looking in the rearview mirror that the people behind were not following that same kind of strategy. Ciro and Marza were definitely battling. I wasn't sure who was going to come out on top, but either way it was going to benefit me. In races like this, it's usually the very best strategy to do whatever you can to not bother the people in front of you, especially if you're just in the top 4 or even 5. Since these races are so short and there's absolutely no strategy required, the best thing you can do is just try to get as much good clean air and clean pace as you possibly can. When you're towards the middle or the back, people just get insane. They make ridiculous moves because they're just hoping if they can get in front of one person, that will set off a chain of events where they can start passing multiple people. In reality, it's almost impossible from the middle or the back of the pack in a race like this to do anything, but people still try, myself included. Well, at the beginning, Ciro and Marza were definitely battling, but Marza is now fully within my slipstream range, and that told me a couple things. In this combination, he's faster than me. I knew that if I made any mistakes, he'd be all over me. He's got a legitimate spot in the World Tour if he continues performing the way that he has, so he's definitely not going to be nice to me if he catches up to me. Even though I haven't been trying to pass Joao, I also have been trying to stay as close to him as possible, and he's still able to pull away from me just slightly. It wasn't a foregone conclusion, but considering the fact that Marza was more than a second behind me at the beginning of this lap, he's much closer and Joao's getting further away, I actually thought that I was going to lose that position really soon. One of the worst things that I do in racing, and to be honest, life in general, is just let all these thoughts cascade and get much worse than they actually are. I just let them build up, and then I start spiraling. But I've had enough spiraling lately, so I was able just to keep my head down and focus on driving rather than focus on where the people around me were, and I was able to keep this position for quite some time. Jumping forward to the end of lap 3, things had gotten a lot closer between all 3 of us. Not only was I able to get a lot closer to Joao, he kept making small mistakes, but Marza was also a lot closer to me. In situations like this, you can find kind of an odd bit of stasis, kind of an odd balance when it comes to people of relatively similar paces. Since we do have the slipstream on the straights, the cars are going to make the biggest difference there. But then when you get a little bit closer, dirty air plays a huge part in the corners. So you might find yourself getting closer and closer to the car in front and then further and further away during the corners, especially if the car in front of you handles better. And then if you're with the same car, like Marza is with me, you'll find yourself not really able to handle just like the car in front, but then you get a little bit closer on slip, just like you're seeing right now. It was about this point that I realized that I couldn't really work with Joao anymore if I was just as fast as him, so if I caught up to him, I was going to go for a move. Again, I think it really played a part that I wasn't expecting too much out of this race, because if I knew going into this that I was going to have an opportunity at scoring real points, I don't think I would have had the confidence to try to pull off weird overtaking techniques. There's absolutely no way I was going to try to pass him on the outside here, especially in an FR car, so what I wanted to do was lift early, hoping to bait him into pulling in front of me, which he did. He unfortunately completely missed his apex entering the corner, which is exactly what I wanted, and so I was able to put on that move. Now, I wish I could say that I did this little drift block on purpose, but in reality, I was just too heavy on the throttle going to the right. It sent me sliding off to the right, so then I just lifted and then hit that throttle again, setting me drifting the other way, and I was able to maintain my line, and of course he slowed down because he didn't want to run into me. That stupid little mistake I made probably is what gave me the position that I'm in right now. It was just enough to make sure that those two behind me were directly next to each other, and no matter how fast both of them are, if they're trying to take the same lines, they're going to end up going a lot slower than I was able to, so this was my opportunity to make a clean break. With Rod and Will 2 seconds ahead and really close, Joao and Marza together battling behind me. I was really hoping that being the only one in the top 5 with completely clean air, I was going to be able to actually catch Rod and Will, put up some kind of fight, and go for even better than 3rd place. I looked in the rear view and saw that they were only 7 tenths behind me and thought that I wasn't quite out of the woods yet, but then when I glanced back again, I realized they were 1.7 seconds behind me. They must have continued battling into T1 and T2, so I started relaxing just a little bit. Jumping forward to the next lap, thanks to some stupid mistakes I made, Rod was even further away, but Joao was also even further away, over 2 seconds away at this point. I'd gotten a little antsy because of how far Rod had gotten in front of me, and so I just told myself, once again, I need to relax. I've got a good buffer behind me, and I can just focus on my pace. Unfortunately for me, mindset is not everything. Of course, a proper mindset is very important for racing, but if you don't actually put in the real work, if you don't prep properly for these races, then it's going to show. Rod and Will had both been battling a lot and were still pulling away from me. On top of that, Joao was only 1 second behind, actually a little bit less by this point, a few laps later. If you look on the right, you can see my pace, and the fastest lap I did was way back on lap 5 when I first broke free. A 0.8, a 0.7, a 0.6, another 0.7. This was not good pace at all. In the little bit of race pace practice that I had done just before the race, I was hitting pretty low 32s. I was hitting 0.3s, 0.4s, and I think I hit a 0.2 as well. To be 100% fair, that lobby didn't have the same wind, so that could make up for it, but also, you can see the people in the lobby, the fastest lap was a 32.1, and I was 4 tenths clear of that. With Joao this close, even if I took the final corner perfectly, I was still going to have to deal with the fact that he was going to be in my slipstream, and so I kind of just accepted the fact that I was going to have to defend against him, but hopefully not too hard. And suddenly, I realized that he had a penalty. That put Marza, the one person I really wanted to beat, directly behind me, but luckily he was still 1.5 seconds behind. As I've tried to say before, Marza was definitely faster than me in this combination. I guarantee that he put in more training than I did, and he might just be faster than me in general. He would then have to drive a half second faster than me every single lap in order to beat me, and, well, I was about a half second off the pace. Jumping forward to the next lap, yep, he's a half second closer. That means if he keeps up this pace, he's definitely going to have the opportunity to pass me towards the end, if not even sooner, because now he's within slipstream range, but it also means he's in dirty air range. Setting my fastest lap, he unfortunately set the fastest lap of the race, so I was able to hold him off still for a little bit longer, but he was even closer in the slipstream range than he was leading that last lap. At this point, I made the huge mistake of looking at chat where everyone was mentioning the fact that if I just held him off for this one lap, that's all I needed to do to score more than him for this week, as well as get a pretty good score for myself. As you can see, despite the fact that Rod and Will were battling, they still pulled away from me every single lap. Something I'm trying to get over is underdriving when I'm in nervous positions. There have been a lot of situations where I had a really good win or a really good just result that could have been that I throw away on the very last lap, if not the very last corner. So you can probably tell all of my inputs are pretty shaky. I'm making mistakes, and right there, I cost myself multiple tenths in a single corner. If I were to make a single mistake, just one more mistake, there would be almost no way I could keep Marza from passing me, especially with the fact that the final corner leads to a long straight, and he would have that benefit going towards the finish line. I don't know if he was too aggressive or if the dirty air really caught him, but I was able to put a little bit more distance going into the final corner, and that was pretty much it. I think he was able to take that corner a lot better than me the entire race, and it looks like he even gained 2 tenths just going into it, but at this point, because the race was ending now, I did it. I solidified my 3rd place. I solidified my podium. The rest of the season is not going to be easy. I'm going to have to beat my best score ever or hope that he only scores terribly for the rest of the season. But even if he does, Aston might not make it. So I've got a lot of really tough races facing me for the rest of the season. I'd like to take this chance to thank everyone who came out to my stream, everyone who was donating and just giving me lots and lots of love and support. It's been really helpful. Everyone who's reached out on various social media platforms, thank you so much. It's still going to take me a couple weeks to process everything, but when I'm good, you can expect a lot more streams, a lot more videos from me, and I'm going to hit this as hard as I possibly can. As always, we're going to finish off the video with member shoutouts. I can't explain to you guys how much it means to me that you continue supporting me like this. I will not let you down. This next year is going to be crazy for me. Thank you.